In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I make a stainless steel knife. Guys, some of you follow me on my Instagram, Nate Jack of Trades, and I often post knives that I've made or am working on. It's something I like to do as a hobby, and it's something I find very creatively fulfilling because as I'm making it, it's both functional and it has form. It's got a lot of design into it, and so it can be decorative but also highly useful. A lot of you have asked if I'm going to make a video on how I make knives, and the answer, of course, is yes. That's what we're doing today. I'm going to show you the process that I use to make a stainless steel knife. This is the shape we're going to be going with. I've made one or two of these before. I actually also made one of these on this channel before, but it was made out of wood. We had a test where I made 3 knives out of wood using 3 different types of wood to see how well the wood could hold an edge. Unfortunately, the answer is not that well, but what does hold an edge really nicely is stainless steel. So that's what we're going to be using today. We're going to make a knife with this design out of this bar of stainless steel. Today we're going to be using what's called 440C stainless steel. There's a lot of different types of stainless steel and they all have slightly different recipes for what elements are in them. Obviously they're mostly iron and carbon, that's what makes them steel, but they have some other stuff in them as well. The 440C is pretty high in its chromium content. Chromium is the metal that makes steel into stainless steel usually. At least that's what it was back when they started adding it in the early 1900s. What's good about the high chromium content in this particular kind of steel is it ends up being like extra stainless. Stainless steel can actually still rust and stain, it's just less than other types of steel. And so this one, with its high chromium content, should be very rust resistant, very stain resistant, and it should take a nice, bright, shiny finish when we're all done with it. So the first step is I've got my knife template pattern here. This is one that I made just out of a piece of foam core board. I just drew it out on a piece of paper, then traced that onto the foam core. I cut that out. Now if I want to make this pattern, I just put it onto a piece of steel and I trace it out. So that's going to be our first step. Metal dust is no joke. You don't really want it in your eyes, ears, lungs, nose, anything. So I am going to be wearing eye protection. I'm going to be wearing a dust mask. I'm going to be wearing ear protection, and I'm actually just going to put on a whole coveralls jumpsuit because I don't want metal dust getting in my clothes all over the place. It's a pain. Okay, so the bench grinder is a great tool. You can do a lot of really good things with it. It cuts through metal pretty darn quickly and easily. However, there are some downsides. It has limited range of how much you can cut. This wheel is probably about 60-70% used up. It slowly grinds down. It starts about an inch larger than that on either side. And the other downside, of course, is that you can't really go in curves with it. So as I go through cleaning out some of these handle parts, you'll see that I have to sort of attack it at different angles to get those curves out. And then some of the tight curves, I'll only kind of get with the grinding wheel before I have to clean them up using different tools later. Now that I've got the rough shape ground in, it's time to start doing cleanup work to really get right up to those lines and get the real shape that I want into this knife. For that, we're going to be using our 2x72-inch belt grinder. It's a belt sander that has a belt that is 2 inches by 72 inches, so a really big loop. That makes sure that there's a lot of surface area to grind on so your belt doesn't get worn out as fast, and it makes sure that the heat gets dispersed so the belt itself doesn't get too hot and burn or fall apart or lose all of its grit. We're going to start out with a pretty low grit belt, which means it's going to be fairly rough and will be pretty aggressive as it takes off the metal. The basic shape is now put in, but I've only been using this super rough 50 grit belt, so I am going to go up to a slightly smoother one, about a 120 grit, and I'm just going to go over everything one more time to smooth that out. And after we do that, it's going to be time to start adding in the blade grind, the bevel that is what takes it from a flat, thick bar of steel down to something you can cut with. The shape is all nicely machined out now. I'm pretty happy with where this is. It's not perfectly smooth everywhere, but it's quite smooth. And I think it's at a point where I'm pretty happy with it and I want to move on. So the next thing we're going to do is start adding in the bevel on the blade. After I put in the flat grind, I am also going to drill a bunch of holes into the handle. Now, 3 of those holes are going to help hold the handle on. They're what's called the scales. It's the wooden or resin or whatever other material that you're making the handle part out of that isn't just the steel itself. They're going to be held on by some pins. I'm going to drill some other holes that are there for a couple reasons. 1, it lightens up the whole blade so it doesn't weigh quite as much. And 2 is it will help the glue that holds the scales onto the metal part of the handle in place. Extra holes lets the glue flow in between and lets you just get a much better grip. So with the knife at this point, with the holes drilled in the handle, everything's shaped out, I'm going to put some decorative marks along the edge, just using the rotary tool. And then I'm going to do some measuring and cutting of the scales. I don't have to do that now, but I want to do it now because once this is all ready, I have to do something while I'm waiting to do the heat treatment. The knife is now at a point where it's ready to be heat treated. I've taken it to that surface level. So I'm gonna explain all of the steps to heat treatment now. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the knife and first we're going to wrap it in this steel foil. This is stainless steel, but at the temperatures that we do the heat treatment, it will actually begin to oxidize, and the steel foil that we put around it helps prevent that from happening. And then once it has been at the right temperature for the right amount of time, we'll take it out of the kiln and very quickly press it between 2 of these large aluminum plates. And this is how you do the heat treatment for stainless steel. There's no dipping it in oil with most types of stainless. Some I think do, but not most. And these plates will actually do a couple of things. First, the aluminum is very heat conductive and it pulls the heat out of the knife at the appropriate speed to get it to the right hardness. Second, because you are squishing it between 2 large, flat, heavy plates, it helps keep the knife nice and flat. It prevents warping as the metal cools down. At least that's the idea. I've had some problems with it in the past, mostly user error, not the technique. Okay, we've done the initial heat treatment. It's come out of the oven. We pressed it between the plates. Now we're going to take it out of the foil and then we're going to put it into our sort of makeshift cryo bath. There are some kinds of stainless steel that need liquid nitrogen cold. This is not that kind of steel, so what we're actually using is denatured alcohol, and we're gonna have dry ice in it. And the denatured alcohol won't freeze at the temperature, so it just becomes like a slurry. It is super cooled liquid that's down to the temperature of the dry ice, and that's gonna be enough. We're actually gonna probably leave it in overnight. It doesn't usually necessarily need that long, but it's evening anyway, and nothing bad happens if you leave it in longer. So that's what we're gonna do. Just take this, put in the denatured alcohol, fill the denatured alcohol with dry ice, and then we'll be good to go. Knife has been successfully heat treated, so now we're gonna move on to giving it its surface finish and attaching our handle scales. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm going to put the scales onto the knife, hold them in place with pins, and I'm gonna shape it all precisely to the size and shape of the metal blade. Then I'm gonna take them off because I won't have any glue on it. At that point, I'll start doing my surface finish. I'm just gonna sand all of this to about 400 grit. I'm gonna put it in ferric chloride until it stains it dark. It's stainless steel, but it's not 100% immune to every kind of stain. Ferric chloride is a great way to add a dark look to it. Then after it's dark, I'm gonna take it out and I'm gonna tumble it with some ceramic abrasive and Windex actually, to just give it a very rough stone washed look. At that point, I should be able to take it out and attach the scales and then finish it all off without grinding into the metal anymore, and I'll be done. Woo! All right, the knife is finished. I sharpened it up. I'm quite happy with it. Everything about this is honestly really freaking cool. Like, it fits really nice in my hand. It's a fairly aggressive type of knife. Like, this is a tactical or like adventuring knife. Like, you take this camping. It's not really a kitchen tool. I put a little bit more aggressive of an angle on the blade. If you're doing stuff for culinary, a lot of the time you're gonna want a very fine blade that gives you really nice, consistent slicing work. This is a little bit more aggressive. Probably the most aggressive blade you'd ever see would be like the chopping head on an axe. Sharpness testing. I've got hair on my leg that I can try shaving a spot. Well, now I've got a nice big bare spot on my leg. Now I get to enjoy that being itchy as the hair grows back in. Overall, I'm very happy with it. The knife is complete. We've got a nice stonewash finish. We've got the decorative carving on the back. That was Callie's idea. She wanted to see that on there. And I'm really happy with the colors that we got. We got the yellow and black. This ebony, when it's polished up like this is about as black as you can get wood to be. And so I'm glad we chose this. It complements really well with the acrylic end pieces. Love this thing. This was a lot of fun. I do like making knives as a hobby anyway, so showing it off to a bunch of you guys. You've been asking on my Instagram to see this. Glad I got to show this one to you. Guys, the fun doesn't end here. Go ahead and click right there to see our last video, and we'll see you in the next one. Talk to you then.